Okay, so tonight we're going to model a container for a specific object. Now, the object, again, can be whatever you please, but it does need to be scaled one to one, unless it's like a printable object or something that then you would like miniaturize. Why you do that? I don't know. Maybe you want to scale model of something else. I don't know. It could be anything, but I would expect it to be basic. Um, Things like you could use like pens and Sharpies, pencils. So you could most certainly make like you could absolutely make this a pencil box. If you wanted it something more specific, I don't know, you could make it something like a stationary container. So I don't know, pack of little post-its and a pen, some little doodads like that. That would be the idea. Maybe a little to-go case, travel case, anything like that. You get the idea. It could also be a small tool case. So if you had like some small like screwdrivers or anything like that, you could use that. But the idea is also you will be required to model that object. You're not going to be importing these from a website. You're going to be modeling them yourself. Now, that said, if it is an overly complex object, so like maybe it's like tools that have like some really involved like grip features, stuff like that, get it close enough. This assignment is very much built around the container itself with specifics there in mind. So what that means is the object can be whatever it is. Build it one to one. Obviously, probably keep it a little bit smaller if it's going to be something that's printable on our printers. Because remember, the print bed is I think 200 by 220 millimeters. So, or yeah, millimeters. So that's not enormous. So keep that in mind. But the idea here is we're making a container that will specifically fit that object or those objects. So it needs to be a snug fit. It will also have to have an integrated hinge. It will, in fact, be opening and closing. Now, how you do that, it's up to you. It has to have at least four components. The lid, be the lid, the base, at least one actual object, and then you probably have like a pin or something that holds the hinge in place. Now we can talk about print in place hinges and stuff later, but right now we're going to go with kind of like a traditional hinge. We'll certainly talk about things like clearances and such like that, because the idea here is it does in fact need to function. This is intended to be a functional object that holds other objects, a printable functional object, but you can throw whatever design you want into it. So let's, like I said, I have a couple of examples. Already went through them, but let's look at them real quick. Uh, Made the older models would be like some sort of a basic container with a hinge modeled straight in. This is very basic, straight up and down. And this was holding a imported model of an adorable frog. More involved was this container that has both an opening integrated hinge, but it also has integrated snaps. So these open and close, and the whole thing opens to hold an imported mistletoe frog or mistletoe model. More of what we're going for tonight is more along this line. Something like a pen case. Yes, if you have fancy pens, more power to you. Or if you just keep losing your Sharpies or something, and maybe it keeps that in there. But this opens and closes, and it does in fact have, in this case, two pens. Now, one thing about this is there is a fair amount of space in this, and we're going to want to minimize that space, but we also want to make sure that there's a way to like snug that down. We don't want to make the thing so large or too big that thing's just rattling around. Make it a reasonable dimensional gap, and you're good to go. Or something to this effect was it does not have a latch on it yet, but a case for a couple of Oreos. I said before, we threw what's called a sectional analysis on this. This allows you to make a cross-section view of it, so you can see exactly what you got going. You can see the spacing here. Probably need to snug this up a little bit, or make it slightly deeper to house a third Oreo. Other thing would be that this model currently clips through itself. You can see that the internal hinge of the base interferes with the lid here, so that was something we absolutely need to address. But let's do some basics here. Let's start a new project just to get us going. Let's save, sample, in-class, the case of the in-class case. Great. So what do you want to model? Well, I already threw some stuff down. Let's just go ahead and keep with what I got going there for right now. I'm going to make another quick Oreo case just because it's in my mind. So import a canvas, insert from computer, go to downloads. Where did my Uh-oh. I don't know where that went. Give me a moment. Oops. Okay, sorry. Had to do a little reconfiguring there, finding a proper image file and such. So had to go through, do some other stuff. Just looking for my picture of an Oreo there. Installed. Okay, just needs to be kind of a basic placeholder just to help myself out. Now, one of the quick things, calibrate the image. Now, apparently you can in fact pull up uh, dimensions for an Oreo cookie, just in case. Apparently a diameter of about 1.75 inches or 4.4 or 4.45 centimeters. So let's go to canvases, calibrate, point to point. That is currently 15 millimeters. That needs to be 45.5 millimeters since it was 4.5 centimeters. Okay, there. All we needed to do. Something. There we go. All right. So what we want to do is break this up into components. Easiest way to do that, just start breaking up, just start building components. Go to new component. For this, we'll just do cookie. Now, one quick thing here that might end up getting you a little bit lost. Uncheck the activate new component, because if you don't, what it'll do is it'll automatically activate your new component, and if you keep working, you won't realize you've changed components, and you'll get some weird nesting issues. Now, if you want just to establish some stuff, we'll say here's the cookie. Okay, let's go ahead and throw out our new component. We'll say that will be the container. There we go. It did not automatically activate, so we're good. This is just a way to help organize things. Okay, so now go to activate the component for cookie. Great. Now it does fade out your canvas image. The issue here being that Fusion, for some reason, has great difficulty nesting canvases within separate components beyond just the main component tree here. I don't know why. I looked into it. There's ways to trick it. We're going to ignore it. Doesn't matter. It's not really important right now anyway. So I'll start a new sketch. Just going to make a really simple cookie. Now, for something like this, easy peasy, make it about there. It was 44.5. There we go. Or was it 45.5? Whatever. Close enough. Close enough is close enough. There we are. So that'll just be our placeholder for a cookie. We can certainly, if you want, go ahead and build in the logo real quick here. Something to that effect. Let's throw in a text box. Oops. Where's this? There. Throw in a quick text box. Sure. Oreo, that's gigantic. Something to that effect. Great. Bold. Center, center. Close enough. Okay. Again, this model is not about the cookie. This is about the object. Okay. Or the container, rather. Finished object. Cool. So we'll go ahead and extrude this. Problem with adding all of this stuff to the base object is you kind of have to select all the things. So if you don't, you'll end up accidentally extruding like levels and things like that. So how thick is this supposed to be? Roughly thickness is about 0.798, so we'll call it 0.8 centimeters. So that's excuse me. 7, 8, geez, come on, brain. 80 millimeters. No. This is what happens when you do this. It's a decimal point, geez. 8 millimeters. Good Lord. We'll call it 8 millimeters. That's the overall size. But if you want to make this slightly more accurate, we'll divvy that up into 3. So that's 0.25, I think, something like that. Yeah, close enough. Meaning that make that for one of the cookies, and then we'll do that. We'll make like a layer between. But in this case, let's just keep it easy. We'll go ahead and make that the 0.8. Great. Or not 0.8. Make it 8. There's my cookie. And then, of course, I could do the extrude for the sketches real quick. So, like the labeling. The only problem is since I sketched everything at the bottom here, this gets a little frustrating. If you have difficulty grabbing just what you want, you can hide this temporarily. I just want that to pop up like, I don't know, 0.5 millimeter. Great. And let's do one more for that ring. Did I get it? There we are. And what I'm doing to make this pop up at the very top, go to start, and instead of at plane, add object. So it just starts wherever you want there. Okay, there we go. Close enough, close enough. We can always make additional features and such. You saw the example that I did before. I definitely added in things like the ridges, and of course, this also has an appearance applied. So we'll definitely throw some more details down, but for now, that'll be a cookie. Great. Okay. Cookie complete, if I keep toggling that. All right, hide the components. There we go. So we're leaving that as our placeholder for what a cookie can be. For the container, now we change components to the new one we just started. Now you remember that if you need to, you can always, or rather, if you forget and you end up building everything on just your base component, and then you realize afterwards you need to add components, you can drag and drop objects. It's not a big deal. So if you forget, it's okay. But if we activate this here, let's start a new sketch at the origin plane. There we go. So what we want now is a container for this. So you can make this round, you can make it a rectangle, whatever. I mean, for a single cookie, it's kind of ridiculous, but why not? That's kind of the point. It's ridiculous. All right. So if we want to start there, we start with our sketch. We'll make it slightly larger. Sure, 0.48. Nope, not 0.48. 48. There we are. Okay. So that would be our spacing for how big we need to make this to hold an actual cookie. But why not make it slightly larger, because there we are. All right. So what we would do is, let's say we want to make sure to move one of these over. So let's copy and paste that sketch component and just move it over so we have a little bit of space. Let's make it an even 50, because we're going to make it for 2, because why not? Okay. So with that in mind, what we're going to do is do some line drawings, things like that. So like draw a line between the 2 points. This will become a reference point later. So what I'll do is I'll turn that into a construction line. So press X or hit it here on the sketch palette. The reason I want to do that is because now, if I'm going to make these two side by side, a little space for them both, what I can do is start with a center point rectangle, and I can use that line between there to find the center. And now I can draw this rectangle out larger, so that will end up being my general size for my container, my box there. Great, that'll work. Okay, so from here, we have a few options of how we're going to go about this, and I'm going to show you both of them. So for now, I'm just going to draw in an extra line. Let's say -2. And use the offset tool to draw some of these lines. Make it easier on myself. Okay, cool. So this will be where we start. So if we're just making a basic container, basic box, that's pretty much it. Now, if you wanted to round this out ahead of time, you could do that. Sometimes you run into errors. But in this case, what we want to do, use the fillet tool, grab 2 corners. Now see how, because I used the outline of this was going to be, I used an offset tool instead of making a separate rectangle. That means that one is going to follow the other because they are linked. Now, before I hit enter or anything like that, go around and do all sides. So select 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Now they are all automatically linked. So now I can either enter numerically or click and drag this arrow, and all of my diameters, all of my fillets will change at the same rate. It's a neat little trick that saves you a lot of time if you wanted to make anything rounded, things like that. So there you go. We'll say an 8 millimeter, sure, rounded. There we go. Okay, cool. That's pretty much it. Okay, let's hit OK. Save what we got. Sketch. I know I keep misspelling things. Leave me alone. All right, so that's going to be our basic thing. We're going to have to decide also which way we want to go, as in, like, is this going to start up, down, meaning like, do you want just a basic Do you want it like a recess below and then the lid is just kind of flat, vice versa? Make it a clamshell where it's half and half on both sides. That's going to be up to you. You decide. Basically, how we do this is going to, both ways are going to translate. Excuse me. Okay. So let's start making this into a container. So we need to use extrude. In this case, we're just going to draw it straight up. So we have a couple of different options. And one of the things we can do here is, let's just say if I just drew a straight box, I'm going to select all the things, excuse me, and then I'm going to drag it upward. So it needs to be taller than the cookie is because it's going to be a full recess there. Recess, recess. Great. Okay. That works. Now, the problem is this is a solid block. Now, what we could have done instead is say, like, do an extrude for, say, all the things, and, or rather, oops, do extrude for, like, say, just the wall. Well, let's drag that up the 10 millimeters that it is. Okay. Then I would need to add a bottom onto this. Unhide that because it automatically hides. So let's now extrude both that inside and that bottom. So let's go down like -1. It doesn't need to be that much. Now the problem here is because the sketch is including several other things, we need to make sure we select both those circles as well. So this is why sometimes I like to divide things into two different sketches. Like the basic outline of the box would be one sketch, and then like the cookies and all that kind of stuff, what it needs to be defined by the second sketch, just makes it easier so you don't have as much to select back and forth through. Anyway, it's on a join. Great. Okay. Basic container, basic box. There we go. Now we do need this to be more snug. We'll get to that in a minute. But that is just the bottom. I also will need a lid for this. So this way was to make the hollow for this was using an offset in the original sketch to give myself a defined wall there. The other way you could do this is how I'm going to make the lid. Let's extrude the lid, and I need all the things. So now the problem is this is sometimes difficult to grab. So let's first label that bottom. So bottom, and hide it because I can't seem to grab what I need. Hide the cookie thing there. All right. Now I can just grab all the things again. And this time we're going to use that to create the lid. But obviously we don't want to start down here because it'll try to cut all of that. So what you do, go to start. And instead of starting at the profile plane, select object and just select the top lip of the box you just made. Now it's going to go on top. However, it automatically wants to join because it thinks you're making a solid object. I do not. So go at the bottom of the toolbox, new body. There we go. All right. So 2, 3 millimeters, whatever. Let's make it 2. Or I'll tell you what, we'll make it 3 for a little bit of extra space. Okay, great. New body, hit OK. So now, label that lid. So when I hide the bottom, see it's a brick basically just floating up top. But the bottom, by toggling the two, is a hollow space. Neat. So how do I make the lid hollow? We can use what's called a shell tool. This is the other way to easily make a hollow object. Shell tool is over here above modify. It's this box with a hollow space inside. Basically, this is another three-dimensional offset tool. How it works is it offsets by how thick you want the walls, and then it makes a hollow space. However, the face you select is where the opening will begin. So I made the first one 2 millimeters thick, so let's use 2 millimeters as an offset. It just hollowed away from the face that I was using. You can see that a little offset right there. So if I change that to like 1 millimeter thickness, it doesn't leave a 1 millimeter space. It leaves a 1 millimeter wall. It leaves a 1 millimeters of a offset all the way around. So the cool thing about using the shell tool instead of modeling it directly, let's say, okay, I just wanted the 1 millimeter thickness. Well, what if I want to make fillets on this to make the whole lid rounded and such like that? All right, go through fillet, yada, yada, yada. Or let's step back in time, move the time slider before I made the shell tool or applied the shell tool. Let's add a fillet to the top round here. And let's just drag that in, what, 1 millimeter? Let's say 1.5, make it a little bit thicker. Okay, say okay. Now I move back forward in history where the shell tool has already been applied. you can see that it creates that fillet. Now, let me hide that canvas that's in the way. It applies that fillet to the inside as well. So you can see how it offsets that in and out. So sometimes it's just an easier way to work. It really depends on what you are trying to accomplish here. Okay. So let's unhide the bottom. There we are. Now this is an extremely basic tool. We have not done any offsets or sorry, I've not made any changes or anything just yet. But what you will definitely need is to model this in separate components. So we are currently working in the container component, not the cookie. It's floating in there. That's okay. But we do need multiple components for this to work. So let's go up. We currently have the container object or component active. So let's make a new component and let's just label this lid. I do not have the activate checkbox marked, so it'll just stay where it is. What that did is now the lid and what will be the base will be created inside the container component. You don't have to have it in here. It could be all at the base level, all sharing the same component tree, but it's just an easy way to keep things organized. Let's do one more for the bottom. Great. Okay. So what's going to happen now? I'm going to shift to auto color. So press Shift in, and I'm going to automatically color just it's going to automatically color the things that I've got. As in, let me activate the whole project. If I hide the container, you see the Oreo is blue. Project now is this kind of salmon color. The reason for this is auto color, but you can see the other components have different ones automatically. So now what I can do, I can click and drag. I want the lid in the lid component, automatically colors to that. Bottom to the bottom component, changes color again. While this is just a good way of keeping things separate within a project you're working on, it's also extremely important for the next parts, which are making the joint and such. Real quick, before I do that, inside the lid, all that stuff, let me reactivate the whole container project. The one other thing we want in here is going to be this space filler part. So this could be printed as a separate object, whatever you want, but let's just do a quick extrude for that, and I'll just drag that upwards a little bit. Nope, I want that to stay where it is. Let's drag that up a bit more. Sure, 7 stays at new body. Great. So now what's going to happen is I'm going to have a nice snug way to keep my Oreos organized. Like I said, you can make this project pretty ridiculous. All right. So I showed you a couple different ways you can make the container hollow. I highly recommend the shell tool because it actually is it will make things easier. If you want to make changes later, you really get the benefit of the whole part of parametric modeling that is Fusion. Now, before I go any further, save. All right. Don't forget to save. Don't forget to start this project by saving. So what I did with a lot of these is just this really simple integrated hinge. And what I mean by that is it has at least one lobe on the bottom, at least one lobe on the top. You could have, if you want to make it even, you could have one lobe on the top, 2 on the bottom. You could have other numbers. You could have 3 on top, 2 on the bottom. You get the idea. Realistically, you probably need an odd number, but not really. It's totally up to you. All right. So how I did that though is we're gonna define what is the back and front, and we'll just go use what the view cube says. That's going to be the front, so hinge will be on the back. What we're going to do is make sure we are not inside the lid or bottom component. We have the container component active, and I'm going to create a sketch, and if I can't get to it, we'll hide a bunch of stuff just so I can see what I'm doing. There we go. Right here in the origin, I want the left or right side. I want to be working from the side. I can unhide these. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use project. So it's just P or create project. And I want to borrow the geometry of my container, meaning use the bodies. I get the outline of those. So now if I hide the lid and bottom, now I have the benefit of just a sketch outline because I want to put the hinge smack on the middle line here. So how we're going to do this, and what I did with a couple of these is like for the other Oreo case and the pen case, my intention is I made a tiny little hole there because my intention is I actually want, instead of like using like metal rod or something like that, because not everybody has that kind of stuff here, or a long screw. We're just gonna use a length. We would just use a length of a filament, and then use a soldering iron to burn it at either ends, and it just fuses that in place. Really convenient way. Or you can use whatever you please. So in order to do that, we're going to use, just create a circle and an inner and a hollow circle. So let's use, for this case, a 2-point circle. So I can start right smack on the seam, and let's draw outward, make it large enough to where it actually is printable. So 4 seems reasonable. There we are. Okay. And I need a hollow space. The filament is 1.75 millimeters. So let's make that 1.8. Yeah, you usually want like 0.1 to 0.3 clearance between things that are going to be printed, because it squishes a little bit. Okay, that's basically it. But we need those lobes. This is up to you. However you want to model these. These can be as complex or simple as you like. This can simply be a line drawn from there to there. It closes the sketch. Or let's go to the top. It could be like a fit point spline that you draw and make like a squiggly thing that continues. Closes the sketch. Now, if you want to make this more effective, we can use the constraint tool, the tangent tool. Remember, the first thing you select is what will move. The second thing is how it's related. So we select that line and select the circle. It readjusts that so that line is a tangent off there. Same thing here. My fit point spline to the circle, it just readjusts it. That's all. Same here, same here. Makes it flat. There you go. This is what this right here would be especially important, is if you were printing this, you don't want a big bump up like this model is. This would make printing the lid kind of irritating to print, unless you were printing it from the bottom, but even so. So there we go. Really simple. That's all we need, just that. Finished sketch. And it hid, and because I have it hidden, it hid my sketches. Jeez. There we go. Okay. Now, the important part was that I created this sketch outside of either the lid or the bottom. The reason for that is now I can make use of that for either of those components. So let's unhide the lid and the bottom and see it is here. Why is that all? Strange. I don't know why that got. Oh, right, because I'm creating this not straight in the center. I will say this really helps if you create your model smack in the middle of the origin, or of the plane, or of your virtual plane, because if you build it right here, unhide the origin, you have the benefit of it immediately being bisected, and it's a lot easier to deal with. If you done like I just did, now I have to kind of do some measuring and such, but that's not really that big a deal. So if you run into this issue, and actually what I probably could have done is just created a construction plane halfway down this object. It's what I should have done, but we're going to deal with what we did. All right. So in my case, I need to measure this, so I'm working in the middle. Let's say inspect from that line to that line. That is 106 millimeters. Cool. What about from my sketch to here? It is 28. Ugh. So 106 minus 28, 78. That's how much more I should have moved it. Or over the center. Okay. So with that in mind, you know what? I should probably just go ahead and create a construction plane. It's just going to help me a lot. So let's build that off the origin. Ordinarily, I wouldn't have done this, but this is just really irritating. So let's move that right in the middle. That should be right. Okay. Cool. Oh, nope. I got that way. It's still way off. Well, we'll deal with it in a minute. Go from there. Up there. Sure. Okay, whatever. We'll deal with it. This way, also, if you work off the construction plane, you can move stuff around as you need. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is for whichever one I'm going to make, be it the lobe for the top or the bottom, I'm going to activate that component. So for the bottom, activate the bottom component, extrude. I need the circle and the bottom lobe. From there, as I drag outward, you can see it automatically is joining to that bottom component. Yeah, I'm gonna have to fix this later. Let's just make it larger. Cool. Okay. It automatically joins. Hit OK. Great. Now to make the part for the top, I have to unhide that sketch again. Let's activate now the lid. And in this case, extrude, I need just that ring and the top lobe. And for here, I'm going to extrude the other way, and you see how it's joining to the top. Great. I do have to do this in two separate two separate operations. So extrude again. I need those two sketch features. If you have trouble getting at them, hide whatever object's in your way. Let's select that again. Bottom, there we are. Now for this one, and had I done it everything right smack in the middle, I need that to do the same, move 6 millimeters, but I need it to start over here. So again, start, go to object, select that plane. There we go. It automatically snaps in place and moves it as you need to. Joins, great. Bam. Okay. So now when I go and activate the whole project of the container, now both my lid and my lid and top have the hinges already joined in. It's just an easier way to work and more efficient way to work. Okay. Oops, keep forgetting my caps lock is on. Okay. So the one other major part of this project is we need this to have a joint, because right now, if I go and move this, it just drags it, moves it out of the way. Control Z. So what we need now is the join tool. Create a joint. So if you go to a symbol, it's just the regular. You can even just hotkey press J. Now you can do this with pretty much anything, as in move. You can actually snap objects in place using the joint tool as well. So we'll use joint. And remember that the order of operations is the thing you select first. So component 1 is what will be moving. The thing you select second is what will not be moving, or rather how it will move in relation to. So component 1 needs to be the lid. Component 2 needs to be the bottom. Now how I go about selecting this, now technically I could actually place the joint. What you need is 2 reference points and it'll move. But since these things are already snapped in place, what I need is this to be selected in relation to. Now, what I could do is simply hide the bottom, float over here, make a snap, do the same for the bottom, select the exact same spot because I don't need them to change position. Excuse me, I just need them to actually be able to join. So let's go to the lid, but what I want to do is actually place this smack in the middle where it's supposed to be. So I'm just going to select this other feature between 2 faces. So my point of movement is technically inside the tube of this object here. To get to that, I'm going to select the face here, face here, and then you see how when I mouse over the hole for this, it's snapping a little plate, it's snapping that object right in the middle, right between those. You see that little icon right there? That's exactly what we want. Makes it easy. Let the program do the work for you. There we go. Snaps to the second object. Now we need the bottom. I need the exact same spot. Now, because it's already there, now I can just float in, snap. All right. Now you have 2 tabs on the joint tool. First is where the position is. Second is your type of motion. For the most part, we're going to be just using the first 2. Rigid is like the things glued together. You can even animate it. Click that and it gives you anxiety. Or the box is very scared. What we need instead is the revolute. Animate it, and now, yes, it's clipping through this object, but that's okay. We're going to deal with that in a minute. But it's moving exactly how it should. Sometimes I have accidentally selected the wrong order, and it has moved in the opposite direction. Don't worry about that. Hit OK. Now on the project tree, you'll see a new thing has popped up, and it is for joints. So expand that, mouse over, revolute. Now we're not going to right click here. What we're actually going to do, and I mean, you can edit motion limits, but if you mouse over this little orange arrow, that's what we need. Edit motion limits. What that's going to let us do is simply place where we want this to move. How far we want it to be able to move. Does this move all the way, only partly, stuff like that. So now, when I preview, when I animate it, it will only go that far. A neat option. That's all. Hit OK. Now, one more step to this, because you saw the other ones, I could open and close this, and it works just fine. However, right now, it's still going to move all over the place. Control Z. The last thing you need to do in order for this to work properly, you need to go to the bottom, right click, and pin it. This pins it in place. It plops it in a virtual environment, locks it in place. Now, you should be able to click and drag and open and close this. Now everything works properly. One thing I have run into, if I mouse over the lid component, this little arrow or this little anchor symbol, sometimes that has inhibited it, the motion properly to work. If you run into that and it's like you've gotten to this point, you've pinned the bottom, but it's still not opening properly, right click on the lid and unground from parent. I haven't always needed to do that, but sometimes I have. So there you go. Opens and closes. Now, if I leave this open, you'll see at the upper right-hand corner, two new icons appear. This is capture position and revert position. Obviously, you mouse over it, and it'll tell you what that means. Revert just means snaps it back where it was originally, and capture position means you want it now to stay in this stay in this position. I don't, so I can either hit revert or Command Z. Okay, neat. Let's unhide our cookies, activate the entire project. I have my cookies. I have my insert. There we are. Let's go back to appearance mode. So Shift in. We want to make sure to add some appearances here. So press A to bring appearances up. Let's find some stuff. So lid could be these could be whatever you please. It does not matter. We're simply, heck yeah, a chrome plated cookie thing. Because why not? And then inside will be a fine, let's see, don't they have fabric in here? Yeah. A nice soft fabric. And then like I found a decent paint earlier that was, what was it? Powder coat? Sure. Powder coated Oreos. Why not? All right. Okay. Now that is the very, very basics of this. We're going to add some other stuff to this in a minute, but right now, that's the kind of starting point for this project. As in, that's what we're trying to get to. Now, like I said before, design certainly is the goal with this. I want to see these as more modeled. Right now, this is extremely basic. It serves its function, but it also has, as far as the requirements, your object is snugly in place. It can move around easily, but it can't like just rattle around in there. Excuse me. Um, that sort of thing. I want to take a break, and I'll show you how to model some additional features onto this. All right, so we've finished the box, we finished the basic container, that kind of stuff. Friggin' Oreos. So I want to show like a couple of stand-ins for one thing would be like some little features of things like thumb catches, things like that, so that way you can actually be able to open and close it a little more easily. Next class, we're going to show, I'm going to discuss more of like the actual considerations for making printable locking features. So like be that actually moving tabs or print in place snaps. But first, we need a hinge for this. We need a pin for this hinge. So I modeled this to the size to actually consider being able to print this or use just a length of filament fed down that hole, and then like a soldering iron or something, and just sear the two ends, and instantly you got a pin. But if you don't have that option, we can print something up. Now, realistically, if you are planning on printing a pin, you should definitely enlarge the size of this, because a that small a diameter printed object will be very, very delicate. You should definitely beef that up to at least 3, realistically at least 4 millimeters, if not 5. Or at that point, just use a threaded rod or something. Anyhow, make this smaller. You could also flatten out a not a clothespin, a paper clip. Anyhow, so for this, we can just skip right ahead and let's just make a really simple object. Let's go back to the container, activate the container. Don't need to activate any of the sides. Just for clarification, make it easier to see. I'm gonna shift back to auto color mode, see a little bit more easily what I'm doing. And in this case, I'm just gonna use the cylinder tool. So I'm going to place a cylinder on this face. So I don't even need sketches or anything ahead of time. Right there. And you'll see that if I switch to that side and I mouse over, I can find the center of that hole, and I can make this big enough. Now, as a placeholder, because the filament we're using is 1.75 millimeters, select there. You see that tiny little gap. That's what we need. And again, yeah, I could drag this all the way, but I want to be lazy and let the program do it. So for length, if I had left it at 0, now it's not letting me select to the face. Oh, that's frustrating. Well, we'll just have to draw it all the way down. I was hoping I'd be able to just use that. So you could make this flush. You could technically print this out a little bit, make it a little bit longer. Great, hit OK. In this case, we do certainly need like a head to this, so we'll use another cylinder tool. If I select that face there, I can even select the center there. Let's draw this out. Let's say 4 millimeter diameter, sure. And let's give this like a 2 millimeter head. Now, this is automatically joining, but it's not joining to the lid or the base. It's only joining to that pin. Hit join, great. Now, this would be you could just throw like a little chamfer on that. Why not? Why not? That's a little excessive. Okay. And the only reason that I made this pin longer than it needs to be, you could most certainly make this a cylinder over here that technically you could say, like, if you wanted, you could print a pin, and then let's make another cylinder right there, starting point, 4 millimeters. There we go. Drag it down. Nope, I don't want to cut operation, but I don't want to join on a new body. Hit OK. Because now, technically, what I could do is print these two parts separately. Let's hide that insert. So you would technically have like the pin and this ring that then you could print separately and glue them in place. But you can't do that until we use a combine tool. Let's use a cut tool. The target body I want to cut away from is the little cylinder end. Tool body is my pin, but make sure to check the box keep tools. Otherwise, it would delete my pin. There we go. So now, when I hide the pin, now it's a cylinder, or it's a tube. So that would be a way that you could print those two separately and then just super glue them together at the end. Really simple way to work. All right. So we've got those parts. That's all plopped in place. The one other thing I definitely want to do, at least for tonight, is show you how to make some thumb catches and such. Now, this is all just straight up and down. The other models I had a taper to them, and I did that through an extrude, and you can place a taper on it. I will describe how to do that next time. In this case, just a straight up and down, but we're going to do the same thing we did for the making the pin. So what we can do is make a sketch, but instead, if you say had this as an irregular shape or anything like that, we can take a sketch. Let's go right at the work plane, or better yet, let's hide one of the parts, and let's say I want to work right there on that shared lip. Cool. Now what I could do is, in like case like here, I just made these little thumb tabs so they would just snap out. And all that is taking a projection tool, copying the whole outline. There we go. And I just like doing that because it helps me work. So I now have an outline that I can work from. So let's make that smack in the middle. Let's say, let's just draw a line here. That way I have a reference point that I can find the center. I don't know, little circle right in the middle. Let's do a 10 millimeter thing. And that's right in the middle. We'll have to move it over or something like that, what we could do. Or I could just use that as a reference point. You'll see what I mean in a second. I just want to make a couple of center circles, maybe one overlaps, anything like that. Or I can just use those two just as they are. So it's not smack in the middle. It's all right. Hit finish sketch. And we're going to treat this the exact same way we did the lid and base. So I'm going to hide the bottom. And let's do an extrude for the lid. I grab just those two. Goes up a little bit. No, I have the thing. There we go. Forgot to activate the component. There we go. So just a little thumb catch. Goes up like 1 millimeter. Nice. Automatically joins. Let's do the same thing. Forget which sketch I'm working from. There we are. Because it automatically hides. Let's unhide the bottom. Activate the bottom component. Do an extrude of that and the half round there. And let's extrude downward. Let's say 2 for that one just because. Okay. And now when we activate the whole container project, now those sketches, little thumb tabs are automatically on there. Now, the only trick to this is if I left those as they are, this would be just a pain to print because if I printed this, I can print this hinge in place because the whole thing goes up at such an angle to where I wouldn't have an overhang or anything. However, this little thumb tab, I totally would. So I could fix that with like a fillet and just taking it way further than you normally would. So if I hit a fillet just for that corner, just for that edge, as I drag it out, you can get some pretty interesting shapes just by overextending things like fillet tool and such. So with doing something like that, now it's at such an angle to where I wouldn't need supports underneath this print. So just like we were discussing before, ways you can save material, ways you can either both speed up your print and also save material. If I don't have to print a scaffolding, a support for that, then I don't have a bunch of wasted material. Cool. Let's do the same thing for the top. Little fillet up there. And on this one, I'll show you a couple other things you could do. Let's first start with filleting just those two corners, and I can drag this outward. Weird. Hit OK. Now repeat the fillet for that now extended part. Now I'm not going to be able to push this too far because I am working on a very small lid here. But as I drag this outward, I'll drag it until I get an error. Right there, so 5. So apparently more of like 4.5. Oops. And I can get this kind of interesting like shelf there. Now it does look like I'm getting a strange artifact here, and that is certainly problematic. So I might need to dial that back down to like 4, 3. There we go. Not sure why I was getting that strange step there. It's just part of how the math works out. But okay, and there we go. So that's just a different way you can add additional features. Now, what that would do is since they're just slightly overlapping, I could grab it and kind of twist and it would pop the lid open. Now, currently, there is nothing that is actually locking these together, and that's what I want to go over next class. So this is pretty much what I want to get to tonight, just showing you some of the basic features. We'll activate the whole project, shift back over to appearance mode, but we have some little thumb catches. We have a lid. We have, unhide that pin there. We have a pin that would hold the whole thing in place. And I open up and I have my models of a couple of Oreos. So that's pretty much what we're aiming for. Let's save there, say thumb catch, and call it good. All right. So find some object, something that you feel like modeling. That's what you're going to put into a container. We can do some other kind of modeling next time. Enjoy.